We've talked about indoor and outdoor environments and how to best create those with a fairly heavy focus on school. Let's dig in specifically to what play at school should look like. Hopefully, by this point in time, you're already getting a sense for what I'm going to say and what play should look like for children between the ages of 0 to 8, but I think it's important to explicitly talk about what is best practice for children of this age. One, we've already talked about the time issue. So we talked about the fact that children need around 60 minutes, more than 30, in their free play, both indoors and outdoors. So children should have uninterrupted times to direct and guide their play with adult facilitation. It's very hard for children who don't have enough time to get down deep and be involved in their play and create and solve problems and interact with others. So it behooves us to really think thoughtfully about our schedules and make sure that we are creating schedules that allow children uninterrupted times to play rather than having their day chopped up with moving from place to place and different kinds of activities and very little time to actually play. I have spent quite a bit of my professional time observing in classrooms, and I can assure you that even for preschool age children, they do not get even 30 minutes of time to play independently. They have beautiful materials and beautiful classrooms and beautiful setups, and really nobody gets to use them because they are busy being moved from teacher-led activity to teacher-led activity, group times that take far longer than they should. Group really shouldn't be more than 15 minutes or so. They're at tables doing seat work for long periods of time. So, it really is a waste to have bought all these play materials because they're not actually getting used. And this is supported by research, but also by organizations that focus on the rights of young children and needs. So this slide is kind of going back to what we were talking about the importance of physical activity. So in addition to time to play and get deeply involved, children need to move their bodies. So the World Health Organization recommends at least 180 minutes per day. Hours of this, 60 should be moderate to vigorous physical activity. Children definitely are not getting that amount. Children should not be restrained for more than an hour at a time. And I don't mean restrained just stopping their bodies from moving, but also restrained in sitting in seats, being beholden to what a teacher is doing. So think about restraint more broadly, and pretty much any time where you're directing the show and children are sitting in one place, that's restraint. When children are having sedentary time, that shouldn't include more than an hour of screen time. Sometimes children are sedentary in other activities. They're sitting quietly doing a puzzle or sitting quietly reading a book. That's okay. But when they're being sedentary, if that's involving a bunch of screen time, that's not okay. So I would encourage you to look at the article by the World Health Organization on how children need to sit less and play more to be healthy. So this slide is kind of going back to our notion of what the role of the teacher is. But it is in the chapter for today, which is why I saved it for today. And it specifically talks about different ways that we can approach play in school. I'm going to just say right away that the two approaches that are listed in the green box are the ones that you want to be paying attention to, just like we had those teacher roles that we want to be paying attention to. So this is where we primarily want to hang out in terms of how we're including play in school. So we want to do less of the trust in play approach or laissez-faire. So basically this means like anything goes. You just put stuff out and just let kids be without doing a lot of facilitation. that's great sometimes. Like part of our job is to monitor, watch, observe, be thinking about moments where we can facilitate. But trust and play is really even a step back from that. It's not really even waiting for those opportune moments to jump in with a question or a comment. So a little too hands off, a little too laissez-faire. So another one that we don't want to do, and we've already talked about this as well, is we don't want to be didactic or have a lot of direct instruction in adult-led activities. We're talking about young children, and again, 0 to 8 is the period of early childhood development. That's the ages that we're talking about in this class. And as we've noted before, one, children get great benefits from being involved in play, and two, they do not get development too much direct instruction or too much in terms of adult-led activity. We don't want play to just be a reward for doing your work or taken away because you haven't done what you're supposed to do. Instead, we really want to hang out in this facilitate play and learn and teach through play approaches. So facilitate play is kind of what we've been talking about this whole semester, is that you're hanging out with kids, you're making a classroom that clearly suggests that play is happening, you're bringing in play materials that are appropriate and help get at lots of different developmental skills. You're sitting with children while they play, you're watching when that's appropriate, you're providing facilitation when that's appropriate, because you know that while children are playing, they're getting all kinds of fabulous developmental and academic skills, and you're there to help make sure that happens. A little bit more focused than that is the learn and teach through play. So in this, you are using play as a way to facilitate very specific skills that you think might be missing. So Smolansky's Sociodramatic Play Inventory, we talked about that a long time ago in our Observing Play lecture. Smolansky realized that some kids have a real hard time with dramatic play. That dramatic play is important developmentally for children. So Smolansky developed a play intervention where children are engaged in dramatic play and adults are specifically doing things in the context of that play to help build their skills. So it's not directly instructing children how to play, it's playing with them and being a little bit more highly scaffolded than children who are able to engage in that form of play well. So I would very much encourage you to take a look at Chapter 8. This is also going to be important for your final exam, but look at Chapter 8, read the descriptions of these different play approaches, take a look at the different curriculum that are listed in the textbook and which curriculum types go with which one of these approaches, so that you have a better understanding of what these approaches are and how they can be used with children age 0 to 8 in classrooms. Slide and the next, I wanted to provide a little detail about what two approaches to play in the green boxes on the previous slide would look like in real time. So one, we have talked before about suggested play materials, but we talked about things that were specific to children of particular ages, and I just want to have more of an overview in this lecture of the kinds of materials that we want to make sure that schools include. So as you hopefully learned in your virtual lab school lessons, we want to make sure that there's lots of different areas of the room, so all those kind of traditional areas of discovery and reading and blocks and outdoor time and all the goodies. But I wanted to give like a little bit more bird's eye view of sort of what we want to make sure that we have included. So we want to make sure that children have opportunities to interact with one another. One of the difficulties and problems with more academic-based programs and programs that rely more on direct instruction is that children don't have very many opportunities to talk to each other, learn from each other, problem solve with each other. That is really something that they uniquely get through play. which is why play is such a great vehicle for the learning and development of young children. We want them to interact well with each other, but then we don't always give them opportunities to do that. Another is making sure that there are materials that are related to diversity and anti-bias. We have a unique opportunity and window because of where children are at developmentally and the fact that they have not yet developed bias and prejudice in the same way that they will have cemented later on. This is a great time to knock down those walls and barriers and help children really understand why everyone matters and everyone is important, and that there are different ways of doing things in life, and that is okay. So anytime that you can include materials that help children to think about fairness and social justice and how to be inclusive of other people, that is a good thing, because this is the prime opportunity in early childhood to do so before all those biases, stereotypes, prejudices, discriminatory behaviors set in. We want to make sure that children can freely express themselves and move their bodies. There are many ways to be a learner. Howard Gardner has a lovely theory, the theory of multiple intelligences, that we are not just all academic beings, that we are social beings and creative beings and movement beings. So we want to make sure that children get all of those good arts related things. We also do care about academic learning. Academic learning is absolutely important. We need to be able to navigate numbers and written communication and oral communication. And those are all the kinds of things that academic learning encompasses. But all of those things can be done through play activities. They can be done through worksheets, but if you're just doing it through worksheets, one, it doesn't have a lot of meaning to children in the real world. They have a hard time transferring that knowledge to actual things that they need to do. And as we noted in other lectures, it can be damaging to their social emotional development and doesn't help with their academic development any more than academic activities in the context of play. We also want to focus on process. So rather than what the final answer is, how do we get there? This is something that we talked about with creativity in our benefits of play lecture, is that, and also when we were talking about the teacher role, when you give children opportunities to figure something out and engage in a problem-solving process, they spend more time on the challenge, they come up with more ideas, and they end up learning more in the long run because we gave them opportunities just to play out the process rather than being so focused on what the ultimate right answer is. And then finally, providing materials and opportunities that allow for independent use. So this is the whole hallmark of child-directed, is that children can think about how they want to use materials, they can engage in the decision-making process, they can determine how long they want to spend there, because when children are running the show, I mean, not literally, but running the show in terms of how to execute their play, they get more out of those play materials than if we're simply just telling them what to do. So as I noted a couple slides ago, your book has lots of examples of different curriculum types that apply to the laissez-faire, facilitate learning, kind of more direct instruction, those different approaches that we were talking about a couple slides ago. One of them that's not included is Montessori. So I wanted to give you an additional example here to show you why I want you to look at that information in the textbook. So Montessori is, she was actually an Italian physician. She lived in a very impoverished area in Italy and realized that the children in her neighborhood were kind of struggling with play and that they didn't seem to have a lot of structure in their lives. So she created a play school that included both process, hands-on, child-directed opportunities, also with sort of an underlying structure built in, because she thought that the best way for children to learn was in an environment that encouraged naturally developing skills in a calm, structured, kind of even-keeled place. She thought that children especially need a lot of sensory activities and materials because they are absorbent in that way, very Piagetian. She thought that children, especially between the ages of 4 to 7, are internally motivated. They do not need anyone to push them or drive them towards learning and constructing knowledge, that is inherently built into young children without the need for external encouragement or rewards. So we don't have to force children to learn. Children naturally want to learn, and we just have to provide the right environment for that to happen in. So Montessori learning environments are prepared. So the teacher is acting as a stage manager, and they're very focused on sensory. They're very focused on the real lives of children, things that are important and meaningful to them. And they are structured, but not structured in a teacher-directed, you have to do what I say, everybody sit down in the same place. They are structured in that children are given materials that have sort of built-in check-in points, so that as children are learning the material itself is suggesting whether you're on the right track or not. So children have opportunities to explore independently with materials, and the materials themselves are doing some of the scaffolding. So teachers prepare the environment, they observe, they present learning opportunities. They are teaching and learning through play. They are serving as that scaffold for children's natural skills. Get even more specific. Let's talk about what children at a couple different ages that are likely applicable to the work that you're doing need. So let's talk about what kindergarteners need and what they are generally getting, and what children in grades 1 through 3 need and what they are generally getting. So there is evidence to show that kindergarteners need the same thing that we were just talking about a minute ago, that they don't really, we don't want it to be too loosely structured or laissez-faire, that kind of hands-off approach. We also don't want it to be didactic or highly structured, which we were just talking about. We want to hang out in this middle realm, which is what we've been talking about the whole time, a beautiful balance between child-directed play with some adult love, attention, and scaffolding. So we need a classroom that is rich in child-initiated play with the presence of actively engaged, appropriately scaffolding teachers. And we also need to have rich learning happening through the context of play. So you really need to think, what are the experiences and activities and materials that children need to get all the things that they need, to get all the beautiful benefits in every developmental domain, and to have all of their academic learning firmly in place. But these should be hands-on, play-based, experiential happenings where teachers are guiding, not instructing about what things should look like. So on this slide, I've also given you a video of a Montessori kindergarten so that you can see how this can be done and how academic learning can take place in the context of a play-based environment. Unfortunately, this is not what kindergarteners are typically getting. I wish that they were getting what we were talking about on the previous slides, but most kindergarteners spend 4 to 6 times as long in literacy and math as in free play. And I don't mean literacy and math in the context of play. I mean they're spending time in literacy and math where they're sitting at tables and they're doing teacher-directed things all at the same time, all in the same way. Standardized testing and test prep are now a daily activity in most kindergarten classrooms, so they may not be participating in the official standardized tests, but there is testing happening. I remember when my kids were in school, it was, disguised as a little reading assessment, but it was definitely assessment that was happening on the regular. Classic play materials have either disappeared in early education classrooms, or, as I said before, they're there, but they're sitting on the shelf because they're not getting any time and attention in the schedule of the day, or they're getting very, very little time and attention in the schedule of the day. And in many kindergarten classrooms, there is no playtime at all. If you look online, there is a lot of sort of popular press about how important play is, but my sense from going and observing classrooms is this isn't actually trickling down to what's really happening in classrooms or what elementary schools really want teachers to be doing. And in our next lecture, we are going to be talking about why is there that disconnect? Why is there a disconnect between saying that play is important and actually providing children with opportunities to play? So again, we've already touched on this a little bit, but children in grades 1 through 3 need things to be hands-on, just like younger children. So we don't have to teach every lesson and have children do activities that are completely devised by us and organized by us and run by us and done in the same way at the same time as every other child. Children get the most out of their learning experiences when they get to engage in projects, when they get to solve real-world problems, when they get to ask questions and then find the answer to something that they're interested in knowing. That's these three things on this slide. That's project-based learning, problem-based learning, and inquiry-based learning. So I've also included a video from Montessori for older children so that you can see how academic learning can be accomplished in the context of play. So, what are kids getting in grades 1 to 3? So, it was honestly a little hard to find data on what's happening in classrooms. My sense is that there's not a whole lot of inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, problem-based learning. It might be scattered here and there, but the classrooms that I've been in and observed, obviously this is anecdotal, that's not what I'm seeing. But there is data on recess, so I thought I would go ahead and kind of reshare that. So since the early 2000s, 40% of schools have reduced or eliminated recess time. During the 24-25 academic school year, only 10 states guaranteed children's access to recess. California is one of them. Across the country, average weekly recess time has declined by around 60 minutes. Even shaving off 5 or 10 minutes reduces a lot of time because children weren't getting that much recess time anyway. They're definitely not getting the WHO recommended amounts of daily access to outdoor physical activity. But there is a growing movement in some states like ours to ensure that children have at least 30 minutes of recess time. So not the 60 that is recommended, but way better than the 15, 20 that a lot of children are getting. So we know that physical movement is important and that it's not just a break from the hard work you've done or a reward for sitting all day, but it's vitally important to get children moving to restore their attention and to keep them physically healthy and fit. It's very important for us to make sure that they're getting enough time. So I have alluded to this multiple times, but I want to make it specific right now. So when we reduce play in schools, it is a problem for these reasons. So 1, play in preschool and kindergarten is actually related to children's academic, cognitive, and social emotional benefits. When we have direct instruction, didactic, teacher-directed programs that are, not allowing children opportunities to play, we have the opposite. We are not gaining anything more in terms of children's academic goals than we did through play, but we are getting those academic goals at the expense of social emotional ones. So there is data that dates back to the 60s that shows that when we offer children developmentally inappropriate programs, direct instruction and academic early kinds of programs, that kids have school stress, they are more often to be retained in a grade, they're more likely to show misconduct and emotional disturbance, and this is both in the moment and far down the line when these children are adults. So it's not just a now issue, it's a long-term issue. So when we strip children of play and being children and try and push the curriculum down too far, then we are not getting any additional academic cognitive benefits, but we are interrupting children's social emotional development over the long term potentially. It also robs us of opportunities to be engaged in more meaningful relational kinds of way with children. And there's so much data to show how important teacher-child relationships are, that we need to have attachment relationships with children just like their family members do. And when we do, children's behavior will be better, their mental health will be better, their play quality will be better, our overall classroom quality will be better, kids who've had trauma will do better. So many benefits from play in and of itself and the relationships that can be built during play. And then, as we've also talked about, time outdoors, time at recess is related to all kinds of benefits: increased focus, social problem solving, reduced behavior problems. So very important for kids to have access to play and teachers who are invested in creating relationships during that time with them. I would really encourage you to take a look at the Heckman equation. So this is an economist who has extensively studied early childhood and child development settings, because there is not just a benefit to children, but there's also a benefit to our economy. For every dollar that we spend on high quality early childhood play-based programs, we get multiple dollars back in return on our investment.